I'm Michael Knowles, here to tell you that Rules for Retrogrades, the book and the show, are out now, and you absolutely need to check it out before the thought police confiscate all of it and lock you away.
Rules for Retrogrades out today. Counter disruption. We're disrupting the plans of the radicals. Everyone pick up a copy if you don't already have one. And if you do have one, please leave a review in all the relevant places so that we get it into the hands of all the people that need it. Rules for Retrogrades. Rise.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Buddy.
Hi, Abs.
What?
Good afternoon, parish orphans and retrogrades. Tim Gordon here, coming to you with a solo episode of Rules for Retrogrades. As you can see, in the last couple of episodes, I've been back in my own home here, casting from the center, the nerve center, the den, and I've been happy, along with my wife and my kids, to be back at home. Of course, we were out of town for 3 weeks and have been back for a couple weeks, literally living in an RV park there in Orange County, California, while my daughter Abby was in the hospital. Of course, you kind of know this saga, and I appreciate all your prayers. That's what sustained us for the nearly 3 weeks we were there. I woke up this morning and realized that, because I got a very kind email from my the president of one of my publishers, that this is the month-versary of Abby's surgery. Can I just say, the fact that this is 1 month after her April 6th surgery in Orange County staggered me. In life, you get these chronological, I don't know what to call them, paradoxes, where, you know, you get it when you go to sleep every night. That didn't seem like 8 hours or whatever. I can't believe the passage of time. This is the, for me, all-time gold medal winner of chronological paradoxes, because when I learned this morning that all that took place on April the 6th, I remember the songs I was listening to with Abby when I brought her to the surgery prep, and then I got ushered out. I had to go wait in the RV, which they let us pull up into the parking lot because of stupid COVID-19 made-up precautions. Only one parent was allowed to wait in the waiting room at a time. Steph and I didn't want to be separated, so we were just hanging out in the RV in front of the hospital for about 7 hours as the surgery was executed. You know, the smells, sights, sounds of that day, I can't believe that is a month in the past. It's unbelievable. I've been talking to friends, people that do little odd jobs for Rules for Retrogrades, well-wishers, patrons, people that tell me that we've had conversations over the last month or shortly before April 6th that I don't even remember having. I recall vaguely. It's not like a fugue state that I'm claiming, but it's something, I guess, akin to it, because it's been wild. And the fact that a month has gone by it was shocking to me this morning. I mean, I'm looking at my wife here thinking, I don't know if you can believe that it's a month, but a month to the day. So May the 6th. Wow. And of course, we're seasoned in some sense. We're seasoned vets, Steph and I, at dealing with Abby health drama. You know, she's now nearly 12. That's why I don't actually hold a PhD. I need to tell people I don't technically hold a PhD. I have a PhL, which is between a master's and a PhD, and then I went and got a JD, and I have a master's. the reason I don't have the PhD is because when we lived in the heart of Rome, and I attended the Pontifical Gregorian University, right near the Trevi Fountain there. Abby was born halfway through. Lots of people know that story. She was born at Fate Bene Fratelli Hospital with the shock, and Steph and Abby for the first month would just be stuck there in the hospital. I'd like to tell you a little bit about that because I've been thinking about it so much. But starting then and there in 2008, summer of 2008, and when we decided we'd return home and I wouldn't have the PhD, I'd just get this halfway degree. We became veterans at dealing with the inveterate troubles of having a kid that's in and out of children's hospitals, getting brain surgeries intermittently. But it's funny because one learns as one goes through this that the things that were a big deal then aren't a big deal. It's striking what you get used to. It's really, really striking. But there are new kind of graduated levels of stress and new novelties, even though that's a redundancy, that will greet you along the way, and it's really stark. And I've done a few solo videos on this phenomenon alone, one from the hospital and all that. So I'm kind of thinking of it along a different line. This morning, waking up and realizing that it's a month after Abby's biggest surgery to date. This is a really big one. First off, she's doing amazing. They say this is the second fastest recovery any kid with this surgery's ever made. So it's an answered prayer. I'd say one prayer, but except it's like several thousand people praying for Abby. I think five figures, maybe 4 or 5 figures of good faithful Christians, all you Catholics out there praying for Abby. That correlation ain't causation, but this almost has to be the explanation, because literally second fastest recovery they've ever seen. She was talking the day after the day of this major surgery. Went down to the RV for 7 or 8 hours. Only one of us was allowed up. My wife wanted me to go be the first one to see her. And she was in a lot of pain afterwards. It was a big brain surgery, but she was talking both expressively and receptively, different centers of the brain. She was talking right away, and they couldn't believe it. And she got back to relative normal within a couple days, still in some pain. And I'm not the guy to see a miracle or even an answered prayer around every corner, being the wretched skeptic and sinner that I am. But yeah, this one's pretty convincing. Just we got so much prayer, and her recovery's been so fast. And now she's back at home, just sitting in her chair in the other room there. She's got a special easy chair that's basically got her name on it, and got other aspects of her on it too through the years. but it's Abby's chair, got maybe some stains or whatever, but it's all of our favorite part of the den out there, where we all watch TV or have a fire or listen to Lord of the Rings being read out loud together, or whatever the hell we're doing. So we're really just we're really happy to be back here, and more than happy, whatever the word is, elated with Abby's progress. And it's a strange time. We feel like strangers in a strange land, man. I mean, it's a strange time. We got no NBA basketball this time of the year. All we have is this 10-part Jordan series. We're 6 of the parts through, watching that with great interest, because there's no sports and no basketball in early May is, to me, weirder than no football in fall. Sorry, football people, but it's weirder. And got the COVID-19. Now we're getting more overt, signals from the president that go in the direction that I've been talking about this thing the whole time. Really strange. World historical novelty, strange. I don't know. I don't want to say scam, but it's like a world it's just unprecedented in the history of the world that everyone would be on lockdown for a virus. And then, of course, all the kind of new but old strangeness on Catholic Twitter, and new old-fashioned, let's say that, novelties out of the Catholic world, old squabbles, all that stuff. It's made for a crazy, strange time. And around my household, of course, I'm working on a couple books. I'll announce which ones I'm working on and for which publishers soon. My wife's working on a book, Ask Your Husband, and we've just been talking about this summer, which began early, by the way, which I've never minded because I've always been a summer fiend. I love summer. Was never a kid that liked going back to school in the fall. It's just a time of renewal. And I mean, this sounds so corny, and it particularly on a Catholic or any form of religious podcast, it just sounds sort of pseudo-religious to say time of renewal. Kind of want to punch myself in the face. But around our household, for various reasons, with my family, most of it centers around Abby, dreading the surgery. But also just with other household issues, with the church in miniature, the church at large, the world in miniature and at large. It's just, we decided we're going to do a total renewal thing. So for one thing with Abby, we're doing 5-mile walks a day, just with the whole family, all 6 kids, the little 8-month-old baby, Abby, whoever else wants on our 2-person stroller. Yeah, just to get out and be like walking together in the sun, in the desert sun. Already hot here, even though it's early May. It's been hot for 3 weeks, even though it's early May. And we'll walk, get like a Jamba Juice or something, and just to spend time with one another, not be on social media, not be on Twitter. Everyone's kind of just tapped out of that, and we're just totally renewing things, giving a bunch of stuff to Goodwill. I don't know why, but when you go through something like this, it's like, man, I just almost want to just make severance with a lot of aspects of life, particularly when you see, oh man, this was not X, Y, Z, these 3 things, or whatever amount it is, were not in a healthy or a enlivening aspect of life, leading to a surgery. I don't know if it's just some weird attachment disorder I have, but I'm just trying to do away with things that remind me of the time going into this surgery and this general time of life. It's crazy. It's crazy. Just, it's really strange to live in a time that people later will say this was the most bizarrely interesting period of the last several hundred years. So I wanted to make the point that, A, thank you for your prayers. B, the prayers are working. They've been radically efficacious. Abby's doing excellently. C, again, not in a corny, like overtly Catholic or even overtly religious way, just I encourage people, if you're feeling, I think a lot of people are feeling kind of, at least partly the way I'm feeling, just because of the lockdown and a few other things, and the frightening state of the church and the world. Like, you want a renewal? I really encourage just total renewal. Just be like, hey, I mean, radical changes are easier than gradual changes. That's just a temperamental thing. That's purely temperamental. I'd rather do something cold turkey and be like, let's do 6-mile walks a day. Let's like we went to Costco. We just bought a bunch of pounds upon pounds of salmon. We're just eating like the same thing for dinner every night. We're just gone to a total sort of about face with regard to the forced, just the breakup of the family. Just as when Abby was born, Steph and I were split up for a month because the hospitals in Europe don't allow 2 parents to stay at once. COVID-19, Chalk Hospital basically became that. So we were separated for a couple weeks. That's a big deal for our family. We had no other kids in 2008 when Abby was first born. We have 5 other kids now. I was teaching classes on Zoom. I still made a couple videos living in an RV park. We just want like and just kind of eating whatever we could get, so not that I'm not a fast food is evil person, but just eating too much or whatever. Now it's just like we've gone to salmon and broccoli meals, which is delicious when you've been eating too much cheap food. Being outdoors instead of indoors, even if we kind of have nothing to do. Just letting the wind hit. Abby's got her head shaved now because her hair had essentially been shaved into a tonsure, and it looked really funky to keep just certain braids of hair. So we just shaved it all off. So she's got, in the hot sun, you get a little wind when you're walking. It's just either quiet or there's some nice sort of conversation with the older kids running around up ahead of us on our 5 or 6 mile path, and just the mom and dad, Steph and I talking, or just kind of being quiet. It's really lovely to be able, and it's really key, I think, to keeping families happy, safe, and healthy. I mean, spiritually happy, safe, and healthy. It's, of course, pray, do your daily prayers with your family, but be willing to renew at the drop of a hat. All you need is, the Lord and your family members, and be willing to renew, because it's what's needed every once in a while. Even with healthy people that have generally good habits, you always need to be able to steer the ship in the right direction, even if it's a violent veering from where you thought was the right direction before, or if it's a minor tweak. The minor adjustments of the helm seem to be key to getting to the destination. So it's just, it's strange to tell people, and it's still new, to tell people, a large amount of people, hey, this is what we're doing. It's kind of like, well, why am I saying this? It's just me. I'm just a guy, right? But it also is due in some sense. Here's what I'm doing. Like, I don't really think it's special. Everyone's got their own travails, but you all prayed for Abby, and everyone's been asking me, so I figured wake up a month after the big travail of the last couple of years, and give people an update. Also, so here's one thing. I'm working on a couple more books. I guess books 4 and 5 this summer, awaiting edits from the publisher on No Christian Feminism. That's done and turned in. We're slinging Rules for Retrogrades, and of course Catholic Republic, my first book, are all under the belt. So we'll have written by the end of hopefully this summer or fall, early fall, 5 books to my name, authored or co-authored, and yet one of my favorite things I've ever written, I don't talk about it very often, is the long novel that I've been working on since around the time of since a little before Abby's birth. And it's called The Love and the Fear of Fate. And I don't know how to finish it, and I've tweaked it more than I've ever tweaked any of my other writings. There are trace elements of that I made during and after Abby's, the travail in Rome, with Abby being in the hospital, being born so suddenly, a young man, and my wife a young woman, just not expecting that kind of hardship. Both of us pretty unexposed to that kind of hardship, particularly being in a foreign country. That, man, we were just bombarded each in our own way. And I'm really fond of things that my lead character in Love and Fear of Fate, I'm basically having him, he's writing about his father. His father has a heart attack in Rome, goes to the same hospital Abby was at. And I thought I'd just read one of the things I'm fonder of. It's a first person narrative, first person perspective. I thought I'd just read what I wrote about. It's about not the kind of big lifestyle renewal when you renew all your habits and try to refocus them on virtue, but the kind of little daily renewals that are such an ineffable grace. Just a weird little, when you're going through something really hard, whatever it is, health people that have gone through cancer or anything like that, I'd imagine you would recognize this. But people that have gone through anything hard that's periodically challenging, even before you're through the woods, out of the bad situation, and in a position where you can renew your habits and just kind of be happy that you can renew your habits, which is where we're at with regard to Abby now. When you're going through it, the Lord is so good. He gives these little graces, a kind of a breeze, or the way the light hits the buildings. That's what it was for me in Rome. And so every night in Rome, when I would get kicked out of Fate Bene Fratelli, which is it's not called a fjord. Someone will recognize what the term for an island in a river is. It's a little quiz. If Rules for Retrogrades did a little quiz, I just saw what an island in a river is called. And it's a strange French word. That's where Fate Bene Fratelli is. Romans will recognize that. It's in the middle of the Tiber. And I would get kicked out at 9 every night, and Steph was there with Abby for the first 29 nights, and it sucked. I hated getting kicked out. I'd get like a Peroni just walking home and taking the trains. We didn't have iPhones then, but I would just have a little DVD player, so sad and so lonely, kind of stumbling home, just drinking a beer. Now, half the time I would just be watching like The Simpsons on this little DVD player. That's what I would do once I'd started taking the trains, the metro. But the first part of being kicked out of the hospital would be me being greeted by the July and I guess early August, eventually, night air of Rome, which is really lovely. And mostly, but not all dark night. I remember it being still not completely dark, which is weird because it was 9. That's how my memory is. But just the kind of warm night air of Rome, the smells of the city, the eternal city, and obviously a city with profound implications as the first holy see for us Catholics. And it would just be, every time I'd be stumbling out of the labyrinthine maze of the hospital, Fate Bene Fratelli, depressed each of those 29 nights, just hanging on as long as I could. It would always be like 9:05 or 9:06 because we'd delay parting from one another, my wife and I, as long as I could. And she's just kind of stuck there. And I was bringing her books daily. She's just reading entire books. And she could see St. Peter's cupola from her window, and that was a boon. And they'd turn it on right around the time I'd leave every night. They'd turn it on, and she'd just watch it through the night like a lodestar. But so that was the little grace for Steph, is them turning on St. Peter's from, I don't know how far away it was, probably about a mile and a half. It was far away. It was not close, I should say that. That was one of her little ineffable graces, but mine was literally just, you cross the little bridge from you get off of the little Tiber Island. That was the hospital, Fate Bene Fratelli. And by the time I was at the other end of the bridge, I always felt so good that I felt guilty because Steph was stuck in that labyrinthine hospital. And I had been sad each of those 29 nights when I was leaving the hospital, but then I felt good. I felt like the lucky one. I'm like, wow, I'm out of there. It was a weird sort of array of emotions. But it was such a grace and joy. And then I'd get lonely and sad, and I had nothing to do with the apartment alone. That's how I am. From the Matt Fradd interview, people now know my wife doesn't leave the home that often, but she does. I just putter around. I don't know what to do. This is all the more true in Rome before we even had any kids. I was just alone, and I'd have the Peroni, and I'd just kind of fall asleep watching The Simpsons, which I'd been carrying on the metro or whatever. Anyway, so looking back on that shortly after I put this into the book, main character's dad has a heart attack in Rome. And so I'll read from this. The book is called, the novel, probably never to be finished. It's called The Love and the Fear of Fate. And he's describing just me and what I went through there. So I read. At both the lowest and the highest points of my life, I have in each case noted the versatility of a warm evening's encouragement. It can assume multifarious forms. At the high points, evidenced on this night, it plays a passively laudatory role, offering a simple nod and humbly muted accommodations to my hard-earned victory of the moment, only to step aside as my celebrations take the stage. But at the low points, more interestingly, a warm summer or autumn evening smiles down and wisps its midnightly substratum onto the manifold of forms of the barely beheld bodies it conceals, and mixes up a certain reverie of sorrow. One's ignominy of pain is then so nearly concealed that one begins to believe that the only extant portion of it is that portion still visible through the blanket of sable eventide air. Now I'm really describing Fate Bene Fratelli here. 4 summers before, on a vacation with my father in Rome, he'd experienced sudden cardiac trouble, and I spent the last 10 days of the vacation visiting him during the daytime, only to exit the hospital by myself at 9 o'clock each night into the bustling Roman evening. I'll never forget the immediate and stark consolation which greeted me with the rush of thick air at the exit of the Fate Bene Fratelli Hospital on Tiberina Island in the heart of Rome. No matter how badly I felt each night when exiting the hospital, I couldn't help but to feel saved after a few mere moments of being outside. By the third night of this mood swing, I'd begun seriously questioning how such a phenomenon could come to pass so regularly. However prosaic it sounds, dear reader, it is quite true. By the time I'd crossed the bridge from the Isla and regained the heart of the old city, I always felt strangely relieved of my well-justified worry for my father. So, this, of course, my father is in reality Abby, inspiration, muse, and my for this novel anyway, and my the kind of restorative joys of the Roman evening are real. They're one and the same between this character and what I experienced. So on a day like today, a month after Abby's surgery, I'm just appreciating being alive and being healthy and having the ones I love near me and alive and healthy. I think about that. It almost makes me sad because, in closing here, it was such a vivid memory for me for so long. With the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years of Abby's life when we were back here in the States, going through law school, which is a series of stresses. I had PTSD more or less with total hypochondria because of the Abby stuff. And then her first shunt revision was a total revisitation. She was like 3. I could remember that boon or whatever from our Lord, that grace of entering the Roman night evening air so well for so long. And now it's like a distant memory. I have to read from something I wrote at the time to really capture it. But it was very important to me. And this is what I mean. There are little renewals and big renewals and probably medium ones too. But the little ones, the real grace, the hidden graces, you don't even have to have like an Aristotelian reorientation in your life toward, we need to reorient, recenter on these virtues and do it. That's the big one, right? And that's the one you do yourself. It's more like a pure gift, a pure grace that even when you're going through something incredibly like gut-wrenching, something tough, you get them. They're given to you. It's more the true definition of a grace, the little ones, the couple of St. Peter's being turned on right around the time I was leaving each night. I think it was a little right after. Was it after or before? Right after I'd leave, and then right after I'd leave, I'd get the little grace of what I described, just the night air, and there was they would light the buildings. The edifices were beautiful, and there are lots of Romans all about doing whatever they do. It was just cheery, even though I felt, incredibly arid and away from my wife and young daughter alone. It was cheery to have that going on. It would have been less. Some people will say, when I'm sad, I don't want to see anything happy. It makes me sad. That's not how I am. It's nice to know that all this is going on as usual, even though I was a man on an island, a man on fire. That really began more like 6 months after Abby was born. That really PTSD and all that set in. You really become a man on fire. Anyway, it sounds kind of somber. I'm really happy. I'm happy to be beginning the summer of renewal. I encourage all of you to do the same thing. God bless you. Thank you for your prayers. There is, like I said, a wretched old skeptic. I'm not the first guy always to assign supernatural first causes to nice things that happen, but this one I'm really confident. Thank you for the prayers. God bless you. Please stay tuned. We're still kind of getting back on schedule. We have some really good guests lined up for May, so stay tuned and thank you very much.